She's substituted by Councillor Grocott, who I can see in attendance tonight. Thank you very much. The next item come to declarations of interest. Are there any members here that wish to declare an interest on the agenda tonight? I've got a slight minor declaration of interest that I'm on the Aspire board, and there is a tenuous link to the item 7, which is the application for major development to land off Cross Street, Girata development, that has several full applications that have been approved, and this is a minor amendment to what's come before. So there's a non-pecuniary interest, but I nonetheless wish to declare that interest in the interest of open disclosure. Item 3, move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we in agreement that that is a true and accurate event of proceedings that evening? I see from the nodding of heads and raised hands that that item is accepted as sent. Thank you. Moves us on to item 4, application for major development, 1 London Road, Newcastle-under-Lyme. Thank you. Hand over to our officers. Thank you.
Members will have seen from the report that obviously this was a resolution to refuse at the last committee. However, before officers were able to issue a decision, we were approached by the applicant in regards to the parking numbers that were presented. So those are within the report in full. So, but I will just summarise why we're back at the committee with this one. So on the meeting of the 20th of June, we were considering proposed changes to the elevations of block 4 of the development at London Road. So this block here in the far corner of the site. There were also changes to the site layout, which at that meeting we reported would lead to a reduction in parking spaces from the approved scheme previously. On that point, members resolved to refuse the proposal on the grounds that that reduction in parking would lead to an increase in on-street parking and adverse implications on highway safety and amenity. Now, prior to us issuing a decision, we were approached by the applicant in terms of the number of parking spaces that were reported. And in looking at those numbers, we had incorrectly reported the number of parking spaces that were to be included as part of the revised scheme. So I'll just show you some plans now just to reiterate those numbers. So when the applicant presented to officers the total number of parking spaces, they had omitted from that total number these 27 spaces here, which are to be used by residents of the properties on London Road. So if we were to include that number in the total number of parking spaces, there are, as part of this scheme that was previously considered, there is actually 195 parking spaces. So the last approved scheme, just bear with me. I haven't put that one on, but on the last approved scheme, there was 193 parking spaces. So we're now content that there is no reduction in parking spaces as a result of this scheme. And for the avoidance of doubt, the elevation changes to block 4 remain as members previously considered at the last committee. Thank you.
Just to remind councillors before opening it up for debate that there is an existing planning application approval for this site. We're not here to actually decide and debate on the approval of that. We're here to vote and debate on the amendments. So over to you.
Yes, Chair. Can I just check one detail? The proposal to halve the number of disabled parking spaces, that still holds, does it? There's no change in that? Because I can only speak for myself, Chair, but that was one of the things that decided me against the application last time. And I'm disappointed that doesn't seem to be any shift in that, because every report that we get, the format for every report we get to planning committee, there's a statement reducing inequalities. And I find it hard to reconcile the decision to halve the number of disabled spaces with that particular heading. Now, I'm sure we'll be told, oh, it's permissible, it can be done. But I do actually find it quite hard, Chair, to explain why I should support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gorton. Yes, I take on board what you're saying. Officers, would you like to come back on that, please?
Yeah, I think we accept the point raised by members. We reached out as part of the application last time, and it is within the report, to the Highway Authority to get their view on the recommended number of disabled parking spaces. There is nothing within the local plan or saved policies from the local plan that dictates there has to be a certain provision of disabled parking bays. So in the absence of that, the Highway Authority use the Manual for Streets guidance. Within that, it's recommended that there's a 5% provision of disabled parking spaces based on the total number. And from that, they're happy that the number proposed, even though it's halved, still accords with that recommendation, which is why officers raised no issue with that.
It's a little disappointing and a little concern, really. Perhaps the developers may ask for a multi-purpose bay for that when they come to actually drawing it, so it could be used for both, maybe, I don't know, some sort of compromise. I can't see, oh. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to get a handle on this. So when we previously approved this planning application, were the parking spaces in green part of the parking provision for the development, or was it initially always planned to be available for the residents of the properties? I assume the properties 80 to 112 or 80 to 104. So we previously approved it with that number of spaces, and therefore what you're saying is there is actually genuinely no net reduction. This isn't a new thing that's coming. Okay, thank you.
James. Okay, thank you. I can't see any hands raised, so Councillor Fear, sorry, put your light on there.
Thank you, Councillor Nelka. Perhaps I've used the technology in the wrong way. I don't know. No, I think when we look at this, I mean, perhaps it's a warning for developers, it seems, to be spot on with the data that they provide to officers, because we only rejected this because of the number of parking spaces. Those parking spaces are present. So, and again, I think, as the officer said, questions about parking bays fit within the advice that we've got. And I think, were we to turn this down now, we would be on very, very dubious grounds in terms of an appeal. What I would, of course, say to Councillor Gorton in another way is that, if you feel that there should be provision for, or a specific provision for disabled bays and such like, now is your chance to make that in the consultation for the local plan. This is something that could be fed into the local plan. So if you feel that there's a need for representation, now is an ideal time to make that. But in that, coming back to the application in front of us, I'd like to move the recommendation, because I feel that actually that is the only course in front of this committee which is a sensible one.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought when we came to the planning committee before this item came to the planning meeting before, it was about changing the use of the flats from student to general use, and that brought the parking into question. Where if it was private use when it was originally planned, there'd be more, I don't know the figure, but there'd probably more, double the amount of car parking spaces. But because it was student, there's a difference, and we're coming back to general use. So could you just explain that? Where we came to this planning committee about the change of policy for this particular development from students, offer from students to general use. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Officers wish to respond on that one. Rachel.
If you recall, Councillor, there was 2 applications on that agenda for the same site. One of them was the scheme that you're reconsidering now. The other was for the same site, but it was for the variation of the condition to include non-students.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. In that case, we have a proposal to accept approval for this scheme. I'm happy to second it from the chair, being as I can't see any other hands going up. Can we please vote on the proposal in front of us to accept the minutes of the meeting and approve? Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? One. That's clearly approved. Thank you, councillors. Item number 5 on the agenda. This is for an application for major development, land off Eccleshall Road, Loggerheads. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So full planning permission is sought for the redevelopment of a former petrol station within the centre of Loggerheads to form 12 apartments. You see the site edged in red on the screen. It's currently in use as a car wash with access only from Newcastle Road at this point and egress onto Eccleshall Road. So it's at the junction here where the two mini roundabouts are in the centre of Loggerheads. So this is the site layout as proposed. So the scheme as originally submitted comprised a 3-storey building, but due to concerns regarding the bulk and the massing and the impact on the character and appearance of the area, the scheme has been revised to comprise a 2-storey building. So this is Newcastle Road coming into Loggerheads, and here at the bottom of the screen is Eccleshall Road. So the shops that are within the centre of Loggerheads are just over to the right of the site. So the building would face west towards Market Drayton Road with parking to the rear. And the scheme comprises 8 2-bed units, which are these in this block. So it's 4 on each of the 2 stories and 4 1-bed units, which are these over to this side. So just show you some elevation. Well, that's a detailed floor plan, but I'll just show you the elevations. So the building would have a pitched roof and the materials would comprise facing bricks with projecting gables and a contrasting cladding material. The scale and massing of the building is considered appropriate in this location. And there would be sufficient articulation in the elevations and variation in the materials to ensure interest in the design. The proposal would remove what is currently an eyesore in a prominent location in the centre of Loggerheads and replace it with a development which would integrate well with its surroundings. Just to show members, you're probably all aware of the site, but just to show you some photos of how it is at the moment. So this is Newcastle Road. This is the boundary hedge with the adjacent residential property. So you can see the existing structures on the site. Looking further into the site and the 2 mini roundabouts there. So all of these structures would be removed as part of the proposal. So just to give you some context, that's across the Eccleshall Road, the Loggerheads pub. That's immediately opposite the site, which is just over here. That's a restaurant. This is part of the site which will be demolished, but that is outside the site. That's an existing takeaway. Looking from Eccleshall Road across into the site, again, showing that takeaway and the buildings to be removed along, obviously, with the previous petrol station structures. And that's the area of shops just to the right-hand side of the site. And looking back again from Eccleshall Road towards the site. So if I just go back to the site layout, initially there was a lay-by proposed here, which was to be for use by refuse vehicles, but the Highway Authority were concerned about the impact of that and the control of that, how it wouldn't be possible to prevent other people parking within that lay-by. So that was omitted from the scheme. So it's 18 parking spaces are proposed to the rear of the building. The sole access would be here off Newcastle Road. The current one over here onto Eccleshall Road would be closed off. So it's considered that a safe and suitable access to the site would be achieved, and that given the sustainable location of the site in the centre of the village, the number of parking spaces proposed would be sufficient. So in conclusion, subject to Section 106 and the imposition of suitable conditions, it's not considered that there would be any adverse impacts that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of this scheme, which comprise the contribution of housing on previously developed land within a sustainable location and the removal of what is currently an eyesore in a prominent location. Thank you.
Before we go any further, could you show me where the bin collection area is? Can you just confirm that that's my understanding, that's the top?
That's there,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I believe we've got a speaker, Councillor Barry Panter, who wishes to speak against this proposal, representing his constituents. I now invite you to come and address the committee, Councillor Panter. You have five minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin, can your officers clarify whether these flats are designed to be retirement or family use or not?
There's no proposed condition that they would be limited to retirement, so that they would be open to anybody.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Well, basically, I initially put an objection into this because I was approached by a couple of members of the public concerned about the need for further development in this area. Unfortunately, they haven't decided to show themselves here tonight, so we'll leave that one by. I must query a little bit whether the word sustainable applies in this location, because the nearest doctor is just a mile away. There is no dentist, no opticians, no disability facilities immediately available. There is no road safe. I'm concerned about road safety matters because there's no zebra crossing at all. And if there's going to be disabled or elderly residents living in these flats, I'm concerned about how they're going to manage to cross the road. Now then, the next matter, it does say about the number of cars. So I'm presuming they were looking at least 18, possibly people living there. My concern is, say, basically on the road safety matter, because it's right on a main junction with two almost immediately adjacent roundabouts, no traffic lights. There has been concern by the waste management section, I noticed, about the risk of staff and vehicles getting refuse vehicles in, because if there's only one access, it doesn't look like there's enough space for the vehicles to turn round there. So I'll either have to reverse in or reverse out. I take the point about the lay-by being possibly not of safe use. I understand that, but I noticed that the Longheads Parish Council have objected on the grounds that access is considered unsafe because of they require, another entrance, possibly the other end. I would tend to agree with that. I think that would be very useful in many respects, because if there's ever, if there's ever a road accident right by the main entrance, it cuts the place off completely. I don't know how long that would take. It's my main concern, ladies and gentlemen, is road safety and access to the site by large vehicles. I appreciate construction traffic are going to be large. I don't think that's good. Excuse me a minute. Thank you. I'm not objecting per se. I'm trying to raise concerns that have been expressed to me on this matter, and that is mainly the access. I think there should be one out to the other end, and I'm clear on the sustainability part, because not only that, if there's families with children and there are senior schools either 10 miles away or you go across the border to the next county. That's basically all I can really say on that matter. It's basically expressing concerns as to more to outright objection, Chair. So I'll leave that with you.
Thank you, Councillor Panther. You may resume to your seat. Thank you. And welcome to the member of the press. So this evening, you weren't there earlier when I did the introduction, so I'll introduce you now. Thank you. Would you like to come back on that? Yeah. Okay. I'll ask officers to come back on that. Thanks.
Just responding to a couple of points made by Councillor Panther. In terms of the sustainability or otherwise of the location, there's been at least 2 appeal decisions that are within loggerheads, but certainly quite a bit further away from the shops and services within the centre of loggerheads, where inspectors concluded that loggerheads is a sustainable location. This is a brownfield site, so previously developed land right in the centre of the village, immediately adjacent to the shops and services that there are there, with access to bus stops, etc. So I think it would be difficult. We would put ourselves in a difficult position if we were to try and argue that this is an unsustainable location. Also, we're in a situation now where the council doesn't have a 5-year supply of housing, and in those circumstances, the test that we have to look at is whether the adverse impacts of the scheme would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So officers have identified the benefits as being the contribution towards housing supply within a sustainable location and removal of what's currently an eyesore in this location. So members would need to be satisfied that any adverse impacts that they identify significantly and demonstrably outweigh those benefits. On the matter of road safety, the Highway Authority have considered the application in detail. There's been 2 or 3 iterations of the scheme, and the one that's before you now, they're satisfied that there is sufficient car parking in this sustainable location to serve the scheme, and also that with the removal of that lay-by, they are satisfied that although a refuse vehicle couldn't go into the site and turn around, they are satisfied that a refuse vehicle, given that it would only be once a week, so very infrequent, would be able to pull up adjacent to the site and empty the bins could be emptied, and that wouldn't have any significant adverse impact on highway safety. I think that was it.
Before I open it up to a debate, this is obviously my ward as well. Bearing in mind the previous incarnations of the applications that have gone previously to this, I see this design as a much better design. I like the fact that one of the entrances has been closed off. I think that the safety aspects of emerging onto the Eccleshall Road, I think, will be an issue, bearing in mind the school children activity that have to cross there. I quite like the fact that the car park is at the rear, so you're not going to get the rear frontage of cars on the front of there, so that will improve the image. And finally, it'll do something with this site that really has been questionable over the years, that people have struggled to be imaginative enough to actually come up with something on this particular plot. So I think that is a definite plus for the centre of the village to what it is now, with some sort of identity at least. I'm not convinced of the design, but I'm happy to support this proposal as it is. And I now open it up to councillors to debate. Over to you, councillors. Councillor Fear, then Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. No, I agree with what you've just said. It seems to me that what we're looking for in this borough is to develop on brownfield sites in central locations. And this does precisely that. And also, I think it's fair to say, and I'd be surprised if anyone would disagree with this statement, that when one looks at the photographs of what's there at the moment, this is manifestly a planning gain, it seems to me. What's there at the moment is pretty horrible. In terms of road safety, I also agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that I think having the access where it's proposed rather than on the Eccleshall Road makes an awful lot of sense. And of course, what was there previous to this, a car wash is going to have a lot of vehicular movement anyway. Arguably, this is going to have less vehicular movement over the day. The only thing that concerns me a little bit, I'm not a great fan, as you well know, Mr. Chairman, of cladding. That I think we need to look carefully at the proposed cladding on those protruding bits and pieces. But beyond that, we're going to replace some ugly square boxes with a building with a pitched roof, which I think will fit in much better to the situation. So broadly speaking, I think we've got a planning gain here, and I am minded to support this resolution.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Fear. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine's on design, really, because no matter where you come from, whether you come Eccleshall, Market Drayton or Newcastle, or come along the state from, you'll tell me if I'm wrong, across the other side, the opposite side of the road from this development. What's the view? How can I say? It'll be the views of this particular building. Now, particularly if you're coming from Newcastle, you'll be looking at the gable end. Is that the one there? That's the southern elevation.
I understand, Councillor Williams, that you will be looking from the side, and the frontage you'll be looking towards Market Drayton.
It's a 380-degree viewing, isn't it? And also on the planting, what they particularly do, planting at the top, will it be open, or I can notice some trees there, which is fair enough, but will it be lawned? And I suppose the occupants of the flats will be responsible to keep it in good order. So it is important site, Mr. Chair. You live out there, and can you answer that question? Coming from Newcastle, the first site of the developments, and coming from Eccleshall, and across the road, I think you've shown just a view of the roundabout, really, from the roundabout, looking into the centre of the site. Have you got any other?
Thanks, Councillor Williams.
Design or whatever, that can encourage me to vote for this application.
Okay, thank you.
So approaching from Newcastle, you would see into the site here. So yes, you would see that gable elevation, that side elevation there with the landscaping in front. So we're recommending a condition that requires details of the landscaping to be submitted and approved. So we would be looking to try and ensure some sort of a balance, really, between getting some sort of privacy for the occupants. So you can see here that at the moment it's showing hedgerows around these small areas that immediately outside the properties, and then more substantial landscaping along the frontage and the outside of the site to soften the appearance of the building in views as you approach into the village. So that sort of detail is something that we would be seeking to agree as part of a condition. There isn't at the moment, we haven't put a condition or a section 106 requirement on for any maintenance of that landscaping, which the chair's just raised with me. So potentially we could add that, because the council certainly wouldn't be responsible for that. Yeah. But we would need to ensure that some sort of a management company did that as part of the scheme, really. So the design, going back to that's the elevation there, the north elevation. That's what you would see coming in most prominently from Newcastle. And Councillor Fee mentioned about the cladding. Well, again, we're looking to put a condition on that requires, and I thought this was something that might well be raised, to require the precise details of that cladding to be agreed. So yeah, we can look at that and ensure that whatever it is something that would maintain its appearance and wouldn't become, yeah, over time wouldn't become unsightly.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Come back. Would it come back to this committee on the landscaping and the question asked about the maintenance of that landscaping? Because I think it's important. It's with the views all around coming from the roads that I've described. You know, it's important that this landscaping is spot on. We don't want to just a row of trees with no, you know, with no maintenance. We need to, you know, I feel I need to know who's going to maintain it, what actually is the landscaping going to look like. Thank you.
Well, we wouldn't ordinarily bring conditions like that back to committee. Obviously, we deal with a huge number of schemes, and very often there's a requirement for a submission of landscaping details. And when those details are submitted via an application, we would consult with our landscape development section and seek their views on the species, the type of landscaping, and how effective they think that will be in providing screening or softening of the building. So conditions aren't something that we would normally look to bring back to the committee.
The local residents should have an input to that, as I say, because it's an important site visually. Thank you.
You, Councillor Williams, that could be said on all sites and applications that residents have had the chance to comment on this application, and also via their parish council. I can't see any more hands going up, so I'm happy to go with the proposal, I think, from Councillor Fee. Do you still wish to go with your proposal with the subject to the amended conditions applied?
No, I'm happy with that, and I'm also confident that the landscape team will look at this carefully. I know that there are extra landscaping and biodiversity gain legislation coming on. I'm sure that our officers are well ahead of the game in that regard, so I'm confident that they will do that. So I'm happy, yes, to move this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Fee. Do we see a seconder? Councillor Hutchinson. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got a proposal to accept this application and to approve it. Can I see a show of hands, please, in favour of the recommendations? And that's unanimous. So that is clearly passed. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is item number 6, application for major development, Newcastle Baptist Church, London Road, Newcastle. Over to you, officers.
Thank you, Chair. So permission was originally granted in 2014 for the erection of a residential apartment development on the site of the former Baptist church at the corner of London Road and Vesey Terrace in Newcastle. I'm sure many members will remember this scheme coming back before you at least 2 times, I think possibly 3. So this is the Cherry Tree pub just here. So the consent has been varied 2 or 3 times, and most recently the scheme was approved with 17 car parking spaces. So the proposed scheme now seeks to reduce the height of the building from 4 stories to 3, to reduce the number of parking spaces from 17 to 15, and to change the split of 1-bed and 2-bed units from previously approved was 15 2-bed and 7 1-bed. And they're now looking to change that to 18 1-bed and 4 2-bed. So the footprint of the building and the elevational treatment would remain very similar to in the approved scheme. So this is the site layout of the approved scheme. So this is the corner here, London Road, Vesey Terrace there. The building was proposed in this location at the front of the site with parking in at the rear, accessed off Vesey Terrace. What's proposed now, it's a different sort of plan, so it looks more different than it actually is, but London Road, Vesey Terrace there, again, building at the front, access in at the rear to the car parking spaces behind. The elevations, so that's the scheme as approved. 4 stories, flat roof, quite a contemporary design with 2 contrasting brick colours. And what they're proposing to do is literally take a floor off. So that's what's proposed now. 3 stories, same sort of idea, flat roof, 2 contrasting brick colours. So the design and elevational treatment is considered acceptable as it was previously. In terms of parking spaces, although a reduction in the number of parking spaces is proposed, so we're going from 17 to 15, the number of 2-bed apartments would be reduced significantly from 15 in the previous scheme to just 4. And obviously, then the number of 1-bed apartments would increase substantially. So overall, there's a much greater proportion of 1-bed apartments. The site is in a highly sustainable location where parking on the local roads is controlled via a mixture of residence parking zones, traffic regulations. I do have a few photographs here to show you. So this is Vesey Terrace, and you can see that there's parking controls in place here where it's residents only. There are the signs which limit it to residents. Again, on the other side, and that's it. So the Highway Authority doesn't object to the on-site parking provision, and it's not considered that a refusal on the grounds of insufficient parking could be sustained. Thank you.
Rachel, I'll now open it up for debate. Councillors, over to you. Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This I thought was the hardest of all the items that we have on the agenda this evening. I didn't much care for this site. I still don't frankly care much for the design here. I prefer proper roofs, not flat roofs. However, I am aware, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, the office will put me right, that there is a fallback position here anyway. There's a lot of reference to approved plans. So what we're looking at here, it seems to me, is potentially a way of getting something a little bit better than what could be built already. Now, in that regard, it is disappointing that 2 parking spaces have been lost. However, my personal view is that the gain here is the loss of a story of this building. I think it would fit much better into the street scene in what is proposed this evening than what we could have tomorrow. Let's be mindful that the previous scheme could be built out. And again, I'm sure if I'm wrong in saying that, the officer will correct me. So I'll listen to what other colleagues have to say this evening, but I must say personally, I'm minded, not with enthusiasm, but I am minded to vote for this recommendation because I think, in fact, what's in front of us is a better option than the option that's already there at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. I'm inclined to agree with you on that. Any other councillor wishing to speak on this? Councillor Williams.
I can't particularly vote for this this plan application. I think we started off, was it 2014, with a building that we approved and design which we approved in relation to the setting, and with the Victorian dwellings to the north of this planning application. And over the years, it's whittled down, and I suspect whether the developer wanted this particular design from the word go. I don't think we'd have accepted it. But here we are, you know, in 2023, where it's 6, 7, 8 years from the original planning permission. And as we come down come south from the Old Trinity Church, we've got the gable, sorry, the roof, the pitch roofs, and then you'll see a square sticking out. You know, you can see it there. If on that particular, on the left-hand side, the bottom one, you can see it there. It'll be sticking out on the from that gable quite substantially. And sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just can't vote for this application. I think it's safe to keep in with exactly where it is. And I don't go into the parking because we seem to be reducing the car parking in all our developments at every meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Just to remind you that we have got a fallback position on this, should it not be approved tonight. Previous approval, which would mean
perhaps, Mr. Chairman, if the officer could show the previous plans which have been approved, that would be helpful to us all.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. I agree.
So that's the scheme that has been approved relatively recently by members. The scheme right back from the beginning in 2014 has always had a flat roof. Has always been relatively contemporary in its design. So there isn't really any change there. As has been set out, there is a genuine fallback position here in that not only have they got a previous planning permission, but they have made a material commencement on site, which means that that permission now remains valid in perpetuity. So at any time they could they could carry out that development. So that's the fallback position, and that's what you need to bear in mind. You've really got to consider, is what is proposed now, i.e. that, is that significantly worse than what they could build out tomorrow?
Just to come back on that, Councillor Williams.
Thanks for explanation, Mr. Chairman. But again, no, I still can't vote in with a fallback position anyway. We'll be here forever. I think I won't be. We'll be having a grey beard by then. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Duly noted, Councillor Williams. Is there another councillor wishing to speak on this item? So do we have any firm approval proposals on the table?
I'm happy to move the recommendation as printed, Mr. Chairman. Not with enthusiasm, but I am willing to do so.
Do we have any proposals against the scheme? I don't see any proposals, so I'm happy as chair to second the proposal with the same enthusiasm shared by Councillor Fear. But I think the net gain is for me is the loss of an extra story I think will reduce the impact of the scheme overall on the landscape. So we have a proposal, ladies and gentlemen, that we approve this. Can I see those in favour of approval? Can I see those against? 1. That item's clearly passed. Application approved. Thank you. That brings us on swiftly to item number 7 on your agenda, pages 41 to 48 in your agenda pack. Application for major development land off Cross Street, Chesterton. Over to officers.
Planning permission was initially granted for this site in February of 2021. It was part of a hybrid application, and that included full planning permission for the construction of 9 bungalows, associated parking and landscaping for land off Gibson Grove and Chesterton. The proposals tonight are in relation to changes to the positioning of a pedestrian crossing point on Gibson Grove, as well as provision of on-street parking. So the plan on the screen now before you is the plans as approved. So at the moment, there is permission for a pedestrian crossing point halfway down Gibson Grove. And you can see here, these rectangular bays on the side of the street are parking bays to be used by the existing residents. So at the minute, there are 7 of those bays as approved. So the proposal tonight is to vary those approved plans, as well as an accompanying road safety audit, which is also conditioned. And this now seeks to remove the pedestrian crossing bay to the junction of Gibson Grove with Cross Street, so here on the corner. And then by doing so, this also facilitates the provision of an extra parking bay for residents, taking the total to 8. The Highway Authority have raised no objection to this. I believe they've liaised quite intensively with the applicant as well as officers, and the road safety audit has been updated to recommend this change, and this is why officers are recommending approval.
Thank you very much. I believe that we've got a speaker in support of this application, Mr. Tim Evans. Would you like to approach the committee, please? You have 5 minutes in which to make your case. You'll be reminded after 4 minutes that you have a minute remaining. Good evening.
Evening, Chair. Evening, members. Probably don't really need to say a great deal about this proposal, given what your officers have said just now, and also what they covered in the report. But just wanted to explain the situation in terms of what's happened with the application and why we are where we are at the moment. So the consent that the council originally granted and the scheme that was before you in February 2021 actually proposed 8 parking spaces on Gibson Grove, and there was a condition imposed on that we had to undertake a road safety audit to demonstrate that the highway improvements that were being undertaken to Gibson Grove were satisfactory. In going through that process, the County Council suggested they wanted to see a 1.8 metre wide footway introduced onto one side of the road, and then build outs made so you could form a crossing point in the centre of the road. I'm not sure we actually agreed with that approach, but we took on that advice and then made a further amendment to the scheme through an MMA, so that the scheme that was actually about to be implemented did show the 7 spaces that your officers referred to. When Aspire's contractors went on site and started to undertake the works to Gibson Grove, I understand this caused some consternation with local residents, given that none of the existing residential properties on Gibson Grove have any off-street parking. And obviously the loss of one of those spaces was quite contentious to them. So Aspire started to hold discussions with your officers and also the County Council about whether there was any opportunity to revert to a different proposal that would enable them to reinstate that additional car parking space. So we had those discussions. We've road safety audited that. I understand from the consultation responses and the discussions I've been having with the county that they're perfectly happy with that in road safety terms. And I think it's obviously appeased local residents as well. So I appreciate it's quite a complicated background. I just wanted to clarify those points for you. So thank you very much, and I hope you can support the application.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. You can return to your seat. Thank you. At this point, I'll offer it to members.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, thanks to Tim for coming along tonight. As he does say, there was quite a lot of the residents of Gibson Grove when they were putting 2 islands by them where they couldn't park up in arms, because basically it's affected them not just in parking, but financially wise with insurance policies. It was actually Teresa Finley and John who approached me originally. I know we had consultations with Nick Bromley who went to Aspire, and with these things put in place, I think they will be happy with that. So I would say if we can support that, that would be fantastic. I think that's all I need to put in.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. Anybody else wishing to speak on this application? Councillor Gordon.
Just to say, Chair, how refreshing it is to get an application to vary conditions that seems to have arisen actually from residents rather than a developer. And yes, certainly support it.
So, Councillor Jones.
Given I perceive Councillor Grocott has moved recommendation, I would second that.
Jones, do we have any other comments? Looking around, I can't see any more hands raised. So in this case, I'll be happy to accept the recommendation that we approve. Seconded by Councillor Jones. And I also wish to extend the thanks from myself personally for the way that Aspire have engaged with the council and residents. I wish that every sort of application that comes forward is of a similar nature in terms of engagement with the residents and councillors alike. And I find it equally refreshing, Councillor Grocott, that the way that this has been conducted. So you've heard the recommendation, you've heard the proposals and seconded. For those who wish to support the recommendations, please raise your hands now. Thank you, and I can see that that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That item is approved. That brings us on to item 8 of the agenda, application for minor development at Kids Grove. Before we dive into this, I believe we have an update from officers, which may need to be voted upon depending on if you accept the information or not. Thank you. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. A additional supplementary report was sent out to members yesterday, but I'm just proposing to read that out now. The applicant has submitted financial information to substantiate their claim that the council's Section 106 requirements would render a policy compliance scheme unviable. The information has been sent to an independent valuer to assess and provide advice, and it was anticipated that the advice would be received in advance of the committee meeting. Unfortunately, although the valuer's report is expected in the next few days, the advice has not yet been received. So on that basis, the recommendation of your officers is that a decision on the application be deferred until the next meeting on the 15th of August to allow the views of the independent valuer to be obtained and for such views to be taken into consideration by officers and then by the planning committee in its decision. Thank you.
Rachel, members, Councillor Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always, I think, a little bit disappointing that these things never seem to come in on time. On the other hand, it seems to me that if we go ahead, and I know some members are unhappy with this scheme, if we go ahead without the documentation in front of us, that would not be the wisest of moves. Just one thing I'd like to check from officers. I note that in the report, it already is talking about expiration of time, and the time it says here it was to the 24th of July. Could we just confirm that the applicant is happy that the extra time that this would require is also there, so that the council doesn't get a black mark against its name for actually doing someone a favour?
Yes, I actually sent an email to the applicant yesterday morning saying, given the lateness of this, I feel that we need to be recommending that the application be deferred, but alternatively they could request that it's kept on the agenda, and we would consider the application on the basis of the information that we've got before us. And they came back and said, no, we'd like it to be deferred until the next planning committee, and that they're happy to agree to a further extension of time.
Sure. Councillor Fear, are you content to recommend?
Yeah,
that
I think with that assurance that we are sort of persecuted for being nice, I think deferral would be the wisest course at the moment. I'd look to colleagues to see if they agree or disagree.
Councillor Jones?
Second that.
Got a proposal to accept the deferral to the next meeting of the committee. Members, would you like to vote in favour or not? In favour? That's unanimous. That's carried. Item is deferred. To item 9 on the agenda, application for other development, land in the vicinity of Whitmore Wood, High Speed 2, HS2 Limited. Over to you, officer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the first of two of these applications tonight, this is for land in the vicinity of Whitmore Wood. The location plan that's on the screen here, sorry, just bear with me, minimise that so you can see it all. This application site comprises 3 parcels of land. So you've got here in the far left corner of the screen that what they refer to as site 315. This is Manor Road in Madeley. And this sort of section here on either side, well, wedged in between these red lines is the cemetery, just to give you a bit of an idea of where we are there. Site 314 is accessed from Madeley off Netherset Hay Lane. And on the far right hand side of the screen is what's referred to as site 53. So this is Heath Lane and a parcel of land on either side. The development that's proposed across all of these sites relates to the installation of fencing, pedestrian and vehicular access gates. One additional element is within site 314 here, and it's for a permanent water course crossing. There's one of the tributaries, I think, from the River Lee here, and they're proposing a new culvert in this location. Also, I think it was covered in the main agenda report, there's landscaping mitigation works within each of these parcels of land. So new tree planting, shrub planting, biodiversity enhancements. So the drawing on the screen now just shows you an idea of the fencing that's to be installed. So there's 2 varieties dependent on the situation on each of the sites. They're both 1.2 metres in height, timber posts with either wire mesh or straight wire infills. Again, the gates to be installed, these are slightly higher, 1.5 metres in height, timber construction, timber panels. And then the image at the bottom of the screen just gives you an idea of that watercourse crossing that's proposed on one of the sites. So it's largely below ground engineering works to regrade and level that land, and then a new grass paving system to go on top. The level of work officers consider is minimal. The scale of the fencing is quite moderate, and we don't consider that there's any harm to design or impacting the appearance of the landscape. So are recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'll now open it up to debate from the council. I cannot see any identified raising of hands, so I'm happy to propose that from the chair that we approve, subject to the report and recommendations. Do I see a seconder? Councillor Ryan, thank you. You've heard the proposal, councillors. Please can you vote whether you approve this or not with a show of hands? Thank you. Thank you. And those against the proposal? That is unanimous. Item 10, application for other development land northwest of Bowell and Farm Madeley, High Speed 2 HS2 Limited. Over to you, officer.
The proposals to those you've just seen. There's 2 parcels of land here, accessed off Borough End Lane here. There's an access track that runs through. These are all agricultural fields at the moment, and they're proposing fencing and gates as previously shown. There are on these sites 2 public rights of ways. I think it's Madeley Public Footpath number 5 runs directly through the site, and again across and over through to the other site over here. Fencing is as previously shown, 1.2 metres in height, timber post, wire mesh inserts, and again the timber post fencing and gates throughout. Members will have seen a supplementary report just addressing the comments of the right of way officer. We have sought clarification from them and from the applicant. We are content that any issues in relation to the public rights of way would be dealt with via separate legislation, and they would intend to do that separate to any application before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, officers. Could you confirm for me before I open it up for debate that there's going to be no adverse effect on the woodland surrounding the application?
Yeah, thank you. So within the Act, HS2 have their own construction methods that they have to abide by, and that includes what you often see British standards in terms of tree protection, arboricultural method statements. So they will have already gained approval for those works, and alongside that, the necessary tree protection measures to any adjacent woodland.
The reason why I mention that is that we've been given written assurance that no damage would occur to the woodland while we're in this pause state that's been publicised widely. And I just wish to check on that for the benefit of the residents of Whitmore. I'll just open it up now to members for debate. Over to you, members. Wow, we are a talkative lot tonight. In that case, I'm happy to, from the chair, recommend approval on this, and I move so. Do I see a seconder? Thank you, councillor. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can I see a show of hands in support of that, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That item is moved. Now then, item 11, an old favourite. Land at Dodderspool, Bentley even. Officers, do we have an update? We have no update. Are members content that this remains on the planning agenda to be brought back in 2 months' time? I see nodding of heads, so I consider that item sent. Thank you. That brings us to item 12 of the agenda, in your pack, pages 89 to 116, the local planning enforcement plan. I take it, members, you've had a chance to read and digest this. I'll open it up for debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a query because I haven't seen this come to council before. The timeframes that are given for enforcement, have they changed at all, or are they the same as they were previously? Thank you.
Councillor, through you, Chair. Can I just ask for the question again to be
Yeah.
repeated? Yeah.
The enforcement timeframes that were given, so for high, medium and low issues, have those timeframes changed from the previous one? So the high was 1 to 2 days, medium was 10 days, and the low priority was 20 days. Is that the same as previous?
I would need to check that, but what we've done through this plan is brought forward a new approach really to try and prioritise and to concentrate on those schemes that we think you as members would want officers to follow up. So I can come back with the answer to that question, but what we've got now is a revised, new, updated plan which reflects national planning guidance and a new approach really to the whole issue of enforcement, so that we prioritise and we highlight using the resources that we've got available to us, those schemes and issues that we feel that you would want us to be chasing up as a local planning authority.
You wish to come back on that, Councillor?
Only that I'd seen another local authority that had the classed issues as low. They'd responded within 15 working days, and we were saying 20. That's why I just asked if that had changed or whether that was previous, but no, I accept your response. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chairman. Really just a thought prompted by the last question. It would have been I think it'd be really, really helpful if the document could have highlighted where the changes were. So we could sort of focus on that. I mean, reading through it, I did think actually it was well expressed and clear, but it would be just, I think, helpful to have been able to identify where the changes in this version differ from what had gone on previously. I thought, for example, just to give an example, I thought the section that dealt with high hedges was really useful, because I know that does come up quite a lot. The other thing that I was looking for, and there were a couple of references, and that was to sort of conservation areas. We've got a conservation area in Woolstanton, and I know from time to time people do run into difficulty, and I suspect it's more ignorance rather than sort of malevolence. And I wondered whether there was a document that dealt with rules in conservation areas, which was sort of separate from that. I think if officers had the chance, maybe to, if such a document doesn't exist, maybe to sort of highlight the issue of what you can and can't do in conservation areas a little more clearly, would be very helpful.
Again,
Thank
through
you, Councillor Gordon.
Again, through you, Chair. Take those comments on board. I think what this document concentrates very much on is our approach to enforcement. If what you're saying is that we need additional guidance as a planning authority to explain to people what they can and cannot do within conservation areas, then that's a comment I'll take back, and we'll look at the information that we're putting out on our website and making available to people, so that you know, there aren't any incidences of ignorance as we go forward.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you, councillors, for your comments. This is, I'm sure, will be taken on board by Councillor Fear in his role as portfolio holder. Councillor Jones, you wish now to make a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to leave it late to keep you on your toes, Chair. Just one recommendation on page 11, unauthorised development, which is not the source of significant public complaint. I would recommend we remove the word significant. It's a term that one person's significant can be another's irrelevant, and also weights areas where there's a high population density around a site where you may get 100 complaints, where another site and there's 6 houses adjacent to it, you may only get 4 complaints. I just find the word significant is where you could end up with an unequal treatment, which we try and avoid. I think unauthorized development, which is not the source of public complaint, would fit within low priority, certainly. But I think any level of public complaint, we are duty bound to prioritize that because they're our ratepayers.
Thanks for that, Councillor Jones. That seems a reasonable and fair request. I'm sure that will be taken on board also. Is there any other late comments that wish to be made? Thank you very much, councillors. So in that case, then, can I see a show of hands in support of the noted comments and the amendments to the plan in front of you to go back to the Cabinet in due course? Can I see a show of hands in favour of that, please? And I see that that's unanimous. Thank you very much. The item is moved. That brings us to item 13 on the agenda, is the site visit dates for this municipal year 2023 to 2024. We do this annually to agree on these dates in advance, should we need to make site visit recommendations of part of the planning process that we have in front of us in a committee. We need to vote and agree on the set of visit dates. So you have the visit dates there in your agenda pack. You will have had time to consider these and make your points. I'll now open it up to debate, please. Councillor Fear.
In the hope that we don't need site visits, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move the dates that are proposed.
Fear, I'm happy to second those from the chair. Can I see a show of hands in approval of the site visit dates? Thank you very much. That looks unanimous to me, and that item is moved. I'm not aware of any disclosure of exempt information tonight. I'm also not aware of any urgent business, which brings me on to say thank you very much for your participation tonight, councillors, and for all those attending tonight, also members of the press and our officers in attendance also. I wish you a safe journey home. Take care and thank you for your input. I now consider the committee business closed. Thank you.